how did they get a whole generation of people who just naturally had the law in their hearts, do you think, Caleb? What do you think the process was that made
The
that happen?
Shema.
Yeah, I mean, if you put the Shema into practice from the beginning, this is just like the prophets calling you back to covenant all the time. And people are just like, oh, well, they're making a prediction about the future. No, they're telling you you're going to reap the curses of the law of the covenant if you don't follow it. And in this case, this is a blessing of the covenant that if you follow it, you will be blessed by, which is that everyone in the whole community will know the law in their hearts if they have parents that spend time with their kids and teach them the right way to live. And then it wouldn't just be a single parent, like our saying of the wise says, oh, when a parent sees their kid doing well, that they're glad in their heart. Well, it'd be a whole community of people. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today we are continuing our series on the 30 sayings of the wise from the book of Proverbs. And in this episode, we're going to look at saying 13, when a child does well, a parent rejoices. So let's start by reading that in Proverbs 23, verses 15 and 16.
My son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed. My inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right.
So this is just, at first, just sounds like an obvious statement of parents will be happy if a kid does a good thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a super wise saying or anything until you start, I think, breaking it down. Everybody wants their kids to do well, but
Right.
But what's really behind it? And I think maybe the basic idea is that children reflect their parents, and that is if the parents spend any amount of time with them.
Yeah.
Which seems to be a problem these days. But therefore, since your kid is a reflection of you, right? Then they're also kind of an extension of your own pride, and so when your kids do well, like we feel that we've actually done something well, and when your kid is praised, you kind of hear that praise for yourself, because you had a lot to do with raising the kid to be the person that he's being at that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the pride is that you're just fulfilling like what's basically God's biggest command to you when you do that.
Yeah.
You be fruitful and multiply, and then impress these things on your children, and you did it. So.
Yeah. Well, and then, you mentioned God there. And so like when you see your children acting in a godly manner, then you also rejoice, like along with their creator, that they're acting the way the creator wants them to be.
Yeah.
And that they figured that out. That's good.
So there are at least two things that have to happen in order for this to result. The parents have to be godly themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that the children have a good example. And then, like you said, the parents actually have to spend time with the children.
Yeah.
So it's no good if you're like, model citizen, you're perfect, and then you never spend any time teaching them or, being around them, setting a good example for them. It hasn't helped them at all,
Yeah. And it seems like, families are so splintered and fractured these days that the kids don't get a good model at home, not only of an individual, but of a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to go back and look at it, but if you can go back and listen to our Malachi episode, which was episode 42, I think it was, Always Faithful. In Malachi talks about one of the reasons the people were unfaithful, not just to God, but they were unfaithful to their spouses, right? And
yeah.
They weren't faithful to the wife of their youth and so on. And I think when you set that example before a kid, they're gonna start out like behind the blocks. They're not gonna have a good start.
I mean, it's gonna be really difficult to be a good father if you're a bad husband, or vice versa.
Yes. Yeah. So
kind of goes together. It's like, well, I can run, but I can't catch. So it's like, well, you have to do both to be, pretty much any sport.
It's hard to get good statistics on how many kids are raised in intact families, or how much time kids are spending with their dads or moms.
Hmm.
There's just, you can go back and look like what and try to compare that from 1900, 1950 and today. And it's just difficult to find a definitive number, in the past or even presently, how much time kids are spending with each of their parents or together with their parents. But I did find a curve. I did generate a curve based on statistics that from the Census Bureau that talked about the percentage of households that were intact nuclear families. And in the 50s and 60s, it was around 60%. And then as you went, down when no fault divorce in the 70s and things like that, it started to drop off precipitously. And when by the time you got to 2021, it was around 18%, maybe as low as that. But I did read some other stuff that said they thought maybe it was hooking back up. So the curve was, so maybe there's a good trend going on. And I also found some research that said that fathers are spending more time with their children. And that was based on, the changing of the workplace with, more stay-at-home work and so on, and fathers being able to spend more time with their children based on changes in industrial workplaces versus services and other oriented businesses. So there's some indication that maybe that's changing, and that's good.
Yeah, I like you said, it's hard to get data going back. I suspect that the trend was already in decline even before the first Census Bureau evidence was available there in the 50s.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to look at everything holistically. This didn't just happen in a vacuum. So
Right.
like the things that cause this, obviously we have a decline in faith. That's kind of the angle we're coming at. But I even think, just like our economic model in this country, like the whole idea that dad leaves the home and goes to work, that never existed in an agrarian society.
Mm-hmm.
Back when everyone lived on a farm, like that was your home and that was the work.
Yeah.
So,
everybody took part in it also.
Well, and even if you were like a tradesman or something in a city, like a blacksmith or whatever, again, you're probably doing that from your home. So it's like everybody was there and involved together in the family work. And now we have this, we like compartmentalize all the aspects of our life, work and family and everything. So, yeah.
And faith, if you have any.
Right. Yeah, that's just for Sundays.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, family time is from 6 to 8
We
on
need to move
weekday
these
nights.
recordings to Sundays. No.
Yeah.
All right. So that gets us, this gets us back to our charter verse for all of Bible discussions, right?
Yeah.
This idea of parents spending time with their children and teaching them the right way to live. It gets back to the Shema.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically we look at Deuteronomy 6 verses 4 through 9 as the Shema. There's a couple other verses in Deuteronomy 11, one in Numbers 10, I think, that are recited as part of the Shema. But 6, 4 through 9 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." So,
yeah. So obviously with verse 4 there, it starts with what's also the first commandment in the 10 Commandments, right? That you have to put God first, and that's the foundation everything else is built on.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. A lot of these things make sense when you look at them not as laws, but as the way the world works. Like, if you don't put God first, if you don't put Him as the big foundation everything else is built on, right, then everything else falls apart. If you put the small things at the bottom and build your pyramid that way, it's going to topple, right? So you have to start with God as the base and foundation of everything.
Well, it depends on how you want to look at the law. Like there's God's what's been called natural law sometimes, or creational law. Like it's just the way everything is.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And his law that he gives us through special revelation is still, it's not something new that he just thought up then. It's still going to be in tune with the way he made everything to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Then you get to verse 5, following that, the Lord is one. And it's love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and strength. And that's kind of an admonition to the parents, right? Like, hey, you've got to do this first.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to put in the effort to show your love to God too. It's like all your effort has to go into that. It's not just something that you just say, yeah, I love God.
Like just Sunday mornings, like we were talking about a minute ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like what was the whole thing that they say? Like if the only religious instruction you were going to give your kids was in Sunday school class at church, so that would be like an hour each week, so 52 hours a year, and then for 18 years, and that's all the instruction that your kid would get.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of us don't even get that much anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
People are completely biblically illiterate.
So you got to put God first. Parents have to practice it first. And then, you get to verse 6, you got to love God first. Then you got to practice it first, right? These commandments that I give you today are beyond your hearts, he says to the parents and to everybody. And then in 7, it's like you have to be around your kids all the time.
Yeah.
That's basically what verse 7 says, right? Is you impress them on your children, but oh, by the way, you got to talk with them. No. You got to talk with them all the time about it, whether you're sitting at home, whether you're walking around somewhere on the road, when you're lying down, when you get up. I mean, if you don't live in the same house, you can't do all these things.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Yeah. So if you live all that and you've put all that much effort in, then going back to Solomon saying, of course, when you see the fruit of it, you'll be joyful. I mean, that's like the definition of joy is basically when you see hard work pay off.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you're never happy just because you get a free lollipop. Like not really. You're happy when you have put a lot of investment of some kind into something, and then it actually bears fruit.
Yeah, and if you, as a parent, if you're making all of this effort to be a godly person, right, and so you're a good person, like you're probably a pleasure to be around. That's going to make it a lot easier for your child to obey the 5th commandment, right?
Yeah,
because you're not just some monster ogre dad that's yelling at them all the time, right?
Well, and there you should probably hear like Jesus' warning about causing a little one to stumble, right?
Yeah,
like when you're the primary teacher to your kids, which means you have to model it for them. You have to make it appealing. And if you don't, like you really screwed up because that was square one for them. And you already tripped them up.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to cover all the bases, Exodus 20, verse 12 says, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. And if, like we were saying, if you're living in a godly manner, it's like going to be a lot easier for your child to respect and honor you.
Yeah.
And if you're patient with your kids, right, they're going to enjoy, as Caleb was saying, they're going to enjoy the benefits and the process of being trained. Like that verse tells you the benefits. You're going to live long in the land. But it's the process of the Shema, right? That can be a joy to your kids.
Yeah. This is one of those commands though, like a lot of people who take it seriously, they're not going to say, well, should I really, put God first, or can I have something else on the throne of my heart? Or do we have to not murder? Like, but this is one that you hear a lot of pushback against. Like somebody will say, well, you don't get it. Like you don't know what my dad was like or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, obviously there has to be some interpretation of what honor means. There is not like obey evil commands or something, but that's the command. And so as the weight is on the parents first because they're bringing up the kids, and that's why Paul also says don't be harsh with your children, right?
Yeah,
because if you make it impossible to honor you, then you're making it impossible to follow God's law.
I am the one person who can be sympathetic with you about You can't say to me, you don't know what my dad was like. I might not want to acknowledge what I was like.
Well, and
but
so there's a
I do
degree to
know.
which that's true for all of us, because
Yeah.
all of our parents are sinners. So
Well, it gets and you were alluding to this New Testament passage in Ephesians 6:1-4. Why don't you read that?
children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Or what were we talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. So you might have noticed, if you're familiar with the commandments, that there's an expansion there in verse 3 over
Yeah.
the commandment we just read. And that is that it may go well with you and you'll enjoy long life on the earth.
Yeah, because
So
it used to be tied to the promised land
Yeah.
just for the people of Israel, but this is New Testament,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. So we've broken out Israel.
Yeah.
We're worldwide now. So it's a universal promise to all men. But I think it's instructive for us too, as parents, to say, well, how can I, go beyond the command, right? Not just, I won't exasperate my kids. I'll make it, painful, but not so painful that it's exasperating.
Yeah.
How about if you make it fun? Like, how about if you make it enjoyable? Like, you can go beyond the command.
Yeah. Well, and
Especially if you want your kids to enjoy the process.
show the beauty of it too. Like what we were talking about before, that this is God's law, not because he arbitrarily decided it, but that's the way that everything is structured, the whole world. So
Yeah.
you can use that and then just show them the truth and the beauty of it. So, and they're not going to get it when they're like 5, not consciously, but
Yeah, I had a friend who, he and his son were building a deck around a cabin, and so he told him when he was leaving, like, space them this far apart, using a whatever spacer that he had, a nail or whatever, to space the boards apart. And so he left, and when he came back, he hadn't spaced any of them apart. So he made him take them all up and put them back down the way he had asked him to. And he told him, he said, I gave him this life instruction. I said, he wasn't happy about it. And he said, well, sometimes life's hard. He said, but it's harder when you're stupid.
yeah.
And so, well, I mean, the thing is, sometimes we make things harder on ourselves
Right.
when we don't know or we don't listen to, the simple instruction of the law. And like you said, it's actually the truth of nature, the reality of nature. It's not something made up arbitrarily.
Yeah.
So if you fight against it, it's going to be painful. Kind of like we said in the Proverbs episode that we did, that wisdom is like a law of nature, just like gravity. And if you jump out of a 4th-story window, they both act against you at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It actually, speaking of like, natural law and all that, like if you go back to like the Greek philosophers, they would debate, do the gods say, do this because it's good, or is it good because the gods say to do it? Like, could they have just said, what, murder is good, and then it would be moral, or well, like, which comes first? And then the early church answered the question, yes, God is good, so whatever he says is good, and he also tells you that it's good because it's actually good. It's just it's a non-question is the point. Like it's his nature. So
Well, it's like we talked about in our 10 Commandments episodes a couple of times, is if you were adrift on the sea, shipwrecked, and you're drifting towards 2 islands, and on one island they practice the 10 Commandments, and on the other island they don't accept or practice the 10 Commandments, and there's a group of people on each island, like, which island would you rather land on?
Yeah.
Right?
the Richard Dawkins answer, right? You know what he said recently?
No.
He was saying that he rejects Christianity, but he still wants to live in a Christian culture.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He wants the fruits of it without having to practice it.
Yeah, he said he was a cultural Christian or whatever.
Yeah.
Now he's saying, no, I'm not. But I heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially if your raft was, if you had a bunch of food and stuff that you had saved off your ship and a bunch of supplies and things, if you landed on the one island, they'd just be like, give us all your stuff.
Yeah.
And kill you.
Yeah.
So we don't need another mouth to feed around here, but we like
Maybe.
your food. All right. So,
Coming off of that tangent.
yeah, it's coming off of that. So this is kind of reminds me of Jeremiah, 31 verses 31 through 34, which says, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, 'Know the Lord,' because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more." Now, how did they get a whole generation of people who just naturally had the law in their hearts, do you think, Caleb? What do you think the process was that made that
The
happen?
Shema.
Yeah. I mean, if you put the Shema into practice from the beginning, this is just like the prophets calling you back to covenant all the time. And people are just like, oh, well, they're making a prediction about the future. No, they're telling you you're going to reap the curses of the law of the covenant if you don't follow it. And in this case, this is a blessing of the covenant that if you follow it, you will be blessed by, which is that everyone in the whole community will know the law in their hearts if they have parents that spend time with their kids and teach them the right way to live. And then it wouldn't just be a single parent, like our saying of the wise says, oh, when a parent sees their kid doing well, that they're glad in their heart. Well, we'd be a whole community of people. Like, how proud would you be of this community if you were a part of that everyone in it?
Well, I was just thinking, like, we were talking about the decline of kind of the Western civilization, the Christian world earlier, and I was thinking, like, you could, if you're living in, like, medieval Europe or something, it probably feels like that because, like, everybody you know is a Christian, so it's like no longer will they teach their neighbor or say to one another, "Know the Lord." It's like, yeah, I sit next to you at church, like,
yeah, right.
we all know this, It's like I have a friend who he knew a guy who said he was going to be a missionary to Portugal, and he was like, "I don't know how to tell you this, but they already know." and I was like, "Yeah, but I mean, it's in terrible decline right now in the Western world." So
I'd just really like to visit Portugal.
Yeah, quiet. The church is paying me to go there.
So yeah, I mean, if the parents have to be restored to the children, because one of the problems we've had, is with this decline in the nuclear family, intact families, the breakup of the family, the bad example that's been placed before kids of not keeping a promise to your spouse, or if you impregnate someone, not staying around to help them raise the family that you've created. It's up to the parents to be restored to the children. It's up to God to restore the parents and the children, and so that this process continues.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out in verse 33, right? Where God says, "I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God." Like, God is the one building it. Right?
Yeah, but we know what His plan is for putting this on their hearts.
So it still involves you. You don't just get to sit by, well, God will figure it out,
Yeah.
But it also involves, if not a passive, like a receptive attitude. Because God's the one doing it. And I had a whole slew of verses, which we couldn't have read them all. It was like 8 verses that all talk about, like, God creating your heart or building your heart.
Turns out the heart's mentioned a lot in Scripture.
Yeah, I mean, think about one of the more famous ones, Psalm 51:10. Right, create in me a clean heart, O God, like, because I can't do it, and I can't just make my daughter's heart be filled with His law either. Like, I have a role to play in that, but it's not just up to me.
Yeah,
that's something I remember learning in like a childhood developmental psychology class that I took. They said, like, I don't remember exactly what metric they were using here, but basically they were saying parents account for kind of 1/3 of how the child turns out, like their personality and stuff. And obviously, as a parent, you're always worried about it because you have the most vested interest in them, but it's going to be, other like adults in their life and friends and the culture also have an effect on them. So you only, however they were measuring that, you only have about like 1/3 of the effect on them. And so I was sitting there thinking like, if I weren't a person of faith, I'd just be terrified because it's like, great, I'm outnumbered.
Caleb was thinking, no wonder I'm only 30% as screwed up as my dad is.
Yeah. Well, you trust the Lord, that He's going to bring other people into their life and things like that, because you know that He's writing it on their hearts ultimately. Like you have in your office, you have that saying,
The poem I wrote.
yeah, that He's the author and you're just the pen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And He writes on the heart, you write from the heart,
right.
and that's like what it's saying here.
Mm-hmm.
It all ultimately has to come from God.
Yeah. He's the author. I am an author.
Yeah.
He writes on my heart. I write from the heart. Yeah. So, I better get that copyrighted. I just put it out there publicly. Anyway, so
I said it first. You got no evidence.
It's hanging on my wall in my office. All right. So this reminds us of a lesson we've already done in our Old Testament series in Malachi, when speaking of restoring the parent-child relationship, right?
Yeah.
So in Malachi 4:4-6, it says,
remember the law of my servant Moses, the decrees and laws I gave him at Horeb for all Israel. See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the hearts of the children to their parents, or else I will come and strike the land with total destruction.
So it's kind of crazy that the Old Testament ends with a call to return to the law of Moses and a promise of restoration between parents and children.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Old Testament, like we kept seeing in our study, is just a series of people failing to practice the Shema. It's like even David is just apparently a terrible dad. Like, I guess he was busy running the kingdom or whatever, but his children are, sexually violating each other, killing each other, rebelling against him. So David's like the best example in the Old Testament, right? He's the man after God's own heart. He's a terrible dad.
Yeah.
I actually, one thing that I like, everybody hates reading the genealogies, right? It's like so-and-so, whose name I can't pronounce, begat so-and-so, whose name I can't pronounce. I like kind of looking at the, like Matthew and Luke's genealogies, and a bunch of the names, some of the names you recognize, you're like, oh, there's Ruth, and there's David. And then a bunch of them are people you've never heard of who were quietly practicing the Shema, keeping their children faithful, because that's the line that the Messiah is going to come through. And I like that, it's John and Jane Doe, like living on a farm somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what this Malachi passage is saying, that if you practice the Shema and the fifth commandment and the promises, then the promises of Jeremiah 31 will materialize, right?
Yeah.
But that's by God's hand, as Caleb mentioned, but that's how it'll happen.
Yeah. And of course, there's that day of the Lord term that we saw over and over again in the especially the minor prophets.
Yeah.
And then the mention of Elijah, right,
which
is interesting.
Yeah. And we know that Christ told us that the coming of Elijah was John the Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And we know from Luke 1 that when the announcement was made to Zechariah in the temple that he was going to become a father, the angel said to him in Luke 1:11-17, then an angel of the Lord appeared to him standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He is never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord.
So there's that hearts of the parents and children again.
Yeah.
And notice what he says in verse 14.
Yeah, he says that that the child will be the delight of the father, right?
Yeah.
Just like our saying this week said. That's
Right.
kind of cool.
Well, and why do we know that? Because Zechariah will bring him up in the ways of the Lord.
Yeah, he tells him, like, he gives him these special instructions that he needs to make sure he follows when he raises his kid. So that's kind of cool. So you go through all this, and the parent and the child alike will be prepared for the Lord, right? And that's what John the Baptist was doing when he was calling people to repent, right? He was trying to restore people to the Lord and one another. So pretty cool. So listen to the sayings of the wise, right? Listen to Moses and listen to the prophets. They're all telling you the same thing, which is our wise words takeaway for this week.
Train your child in the ways of the Lord and bring joy to both of you.
Yeah. So that's kind of a cool little promise that's in that saying of the wise this week is, keep practicing the Shema, and, like we've been saying every week, these are like long-term focused sayings.
Yeah.
They're trying to get you to think, not make your decisions based on the weather today or whatever, but on what your long-term goals are.
Yeah. Well, it's like we said with the episode on discipline, right? It's a process, right?
Yeah.
Or even like a lifestyle, not just a series of one-time events. Like, you did that thing, so punishment. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's a strategy. And this is the same thing. Like, again, it's not just, well, here we are at church for an hour on Sunday, and that's your spiritual education. It's not a bunch of independent events. It's to be part of your life. That's what the Shema says.
Yeah. Yeah. And where can you find a group of people that will help you listen to God and his word and to teach it to your children?
I don't know.
So just like we do every week, we try to encourage everybody to join a local church and participate in that family. A group of people, a community of people who are pursuing God and his word. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's Caleb and I'm Timothy, and thank you for listening to Bible Discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV. Copyright by Biblica, Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.